Have you ever listened to an artist you love, dancing and rocking out to their songs, only to discover that they haven't dropped a good song in nearly 20 years? You listen to their older stuff and it's exciting, interesting, and catchy, but the second you put on a song they made past their heyday, it's an instant skip. Then you go to their shows and they just aren't into it anymore. You can't help but wonder, what went wrong? This is the case for many artists, whether it's due to creative burnout or a failure to adapt to a changing musical climate. Not every artist can ride the high they started their career with. This is especially the case for an artist I became interested in last year and figured it would be a good place to start this series. I'm Cody, and for the first episode of the Falloff, we'll be talking about Placebo. In 1994, Brian Molko and Stefan Olsdahl met in England at a train station after Stefan had just left guitar lessons. Brian, intrigued by the guitar Stefan was carrying, invited him to a local show he was performing at. After watching Brian perform, Stefan proposed that the two of them should form a band. This band went through several name changes, including Ashtray Heart, named after the Captain Beefheart song of the same name. They also couldn't settle on a drummer, initially playing with Molko's friend Steve Hewitt, but replaced him with Robert Schultzberg after Steve left for a local band named Breed. Brian, Stefan, and Robert finally settled on a name for their band, Placebo, with Brian stating that it was for the words meaning in Latin, I shall please. He also stated that the name is a callback to 90s bands naming themselves after different street drugs. With this lineup, the band would release their first single, Bruce Pristine, in 1995, their first EP, Come Home, in the same year, and their eponymous debut album in 1996. On their debut was their first and biggest hit in the United Kingdom, Nancy Boy, the title of which derives from a derogatory term for effeminate men. It reached number 4 in the UK singles chart and helped their album peak at number 5 on the albums chart in 1997. The song dealt with gender roles and other explicit themes, with Molko describing the song as obscene and stating that songs like this shouldn't be number 4 on the charts. Robert Schultzberg would leave the band in 1996 after constant fighting with Brian Molko, and Steve Hewitt would return to the band at Brian's request. With this lineup, the band would open for David Bowie after catching his attention. Bowie would be a good friend and mentor of the band, inviting them to his 50th birthday celebration with Billy Corgan, Robert Smith, Lou Reed, and more. Celebrity friendships and endorsements would not save them from public backlash, however, with Molko's androgynous public appearance and punk attitude garnering them plenty of controversy. With such a sudden and dramatic rise in popularity, Brian Molko trying every drug under the sun and getting lost in the rock and roll lifestyle, the band showcased their more vulnerable and depressed side on their sophomore effort, Without You I'm Nothing. This second album strayed away from the fast and punky songs of Self-Titled, and had a slower, melancholy, and almost industrial sound at times. This album would produce two of Placebo's most well-known songs, Pure Morning and Every You, Every Me. Pure Morning is their highest charting song in the United States, reaching number 19 on the alternative airplay charts and number 40 on the mainstream rock charts. Every You, Every Me was featured in the opening of the movie Cruel Intentions, as well as its musical adaptation. The title track was re-recorded and re-released as a duet with David Bowie, with Brian Molko stating after Bowie's death that the duet was an honor and an important moment in the band's career. The band continued to ride the success of these singles into the 2000s, while continuing to release new music. They released Black Market Music in 2000, with songs Taste in Men and Slave to the Wage hitting the charts once more in the UK. Placebo were particularly proud of this record, feeling as if they properly combined the punk sound of their debut with the melancholy of Without You I'm Nothing. In 2003, they'd followed up Black Market Music with Sleeping with Ghosts, spawning their biggest hit in Europe, the 1984-inspired The Bitter End. The band recorded the album after their first big break from working on music since 1996, with Molko saying it was dangerous to work inside that bubble, jumping from touring to studio sessions constantly. While the album sold well, it was the beginning of Placebo's critical downfall, receiving quite a handful of mixed reviews from critics. The band weren't taking many risks on this album, continuing with their themes of gender bending, drug usage, failing relationships, and furthering their melancholy pseudo-industrial rock sound. The following album, Meds, would be the same story, financially successful and a fan favorite, but not groundbreaking enough to earn the hearts of critics. After finishing the tour to promote Meds, Placebo's manager fired drummer Steve Hewitt, who had strayed from the rest of Placebo over the past decade of him being in the band. Following Steve Hewitt's departure, Brian Molko would sober up, drummer Steve Forrest would join the band, and they'd begin work on a new album. Molko wanted to rediscover Placebo's sound, redefine who he and the band was, and he began work with producer David Bottrill, who previously worked with Muse and Tool. Placebo, until this point, worked with producers who've worked with U2, The Cure, Sunny Day Real Estate, and other such artists. It seemed that going from an alternative rock producer to a metal producer was the change Molko felt was necessary for the band. Battle for the Sun was released in 2009 with a more straightforward, hard rock sound than previous efforts. Mixed reviews would keep pouring in for Placebo, and it appeared that even fans of the band had turned on them. After a 50-minute set in Thessaloniki, Greece, fans booed Placebo and threw water bottles at the sound booth, forcing staff to cover equipment to prevent damage. The Battle for the Sun tour would also start a long-running trend for Placebo, canceling or postponing tours and shows with little to no notice. Brian Molko would faint on stage before a show in Osaka, would cancel their North American tour because of this. It was clear that touring and recording music was really getting to Molko. Burnout was evidently seeping in. It started to feel that Placebo were just going through the motions, sticking with what they knew, and barely putting in the effort they felt was necessary. This burnout would come to a head with their 2013 release, Loud Like Love, their most polarizing album today. This album is their lowest rated across the board, unpopular amongst fans and critics alike. Loud Like Love has been criticized for feeling too similar to past releases by the band, having lyrics so bad they read like self-parody, and just overall being uninteresting and unappealing. Clash magazine described the album as easy to absorb musically and easy to ignore lyrically. Loud Like Love is 50 minutes of simply okay alt-rock. Loud Like Love was the first Placebo album since Sleeping with Ghosts to miss the top 10 of the UK album chart. It is Placebo's lowest charting album to date, only reaching number 1 in Switzerland. Despite critical and commercial disappointment, Placebo were still able to headline and tour worldwide, and were even able to make a documentary on homophobia and political tension in Russia while they toured there. Stefan Olsdahl would also protest anti-gay laws in Morocco while they toured there, playing on a rainbow-based guitar. On top of this, they were able to celebrate 20 years of being a band by releasing the compilation album, A Place for Us to Dream. The band would tour for the remainder of the 2010s and would drop previously unreleased material, but fans wouldn't even get an announcement of new music until 2019. Olsdahl confirmed work on an 8th studio album in June of that year and planned a tour in mid-2020, but it was canceled due to the COVID-19 epidemic. In 2022, Placebo would release their first album in nearly a decade, Never Let Me Go. The album would be seen as a return to form for the band, would be critically acclaimed, hit the charts, and would earn the approval of fans once more. However, problems would continue when it came time for the band to tour for the album. Brian Molko has made it explicitly clear that he's not fond of fans recording and having cell phones out during Placebo shows. During their Never Let Me Go tour, they stopped several songs and shows to tell fans not to have their phones out. Security would point flashlights at concert goers and even threaten to throw them out if they had their cell phones out, much to the dismay of the community.
You're being really selfish towards the other people in the audience. And you're making me angry. And it means that the angrier I get, the less I care about the concert.
Furthermore, Brian has also retired many beloved songs from their set list, focusing on mostly newer music and songs that the band preferred. The hit songs that helped them make it onto the scene, like Nancy Boy and Pure Morning, were absent from their set list, as was most of their older work. The frontman has very openly stated that he isn't fond of Placebo's earlier material. Artists do get sick of their older songs after a while, and they aren't required to play fan favorites, but skimping on their most popular songs is the worst way for an artist to shoot themselves in the foot. Even if the band is playing songs that they themselves enjoy, it's been consistently noted by Placebo fans that they just aren't as enthusiastic about playing as they once were. Molko and company tend to just play through all their songs without acknowledging the crowd, save for when the audience is caught using phones. The duo don't even dress as flashy or androgynous as they once did either, further shedding what made them stand out in the first place. And worse yet, last-minute cancellations are still a possibility for fans wanting to see them in concert. It's undeniable that Placebo have carved their niche into pop culture. They've provided an unmistakable sound throughout their career, an alternative to the Britpop wave spearheaded by Blur and Oasis. That being said, it's hard to ignore the gaping hole their passionate identity once occupied. Severe burnout, apparent discontent with fame, and disregard for their older work has painted Placebo into a corner that'll be difficult to come out of. There may still be hope yet for the band to get big again later in their career, but they'll have to really pull it together if they want that to happen. That's all I have the time for today, everyone. Be sure to join me next time on The Falloff.